So, how was it that I got to speak to you guys on the Sunday after the most contentious presidential election in my life? I guess it's that saying, you know, it is what it is, and just be done with it. But I knew this would be an election night because Josh and I was talking a few weeks ago and planning on it. But what brought up for me was my first election, presidential election I got to participate in. And as Michael told me in ministerial school, that was at least over 19 years ago. But I remember because my birthday's around election day, and I didn't get to vote when I was 18. So I had to wait till I was 22 to vote. And what was so empowering, it was that power of choice I was going to get to execute. And all the elders in the room, they were sort of my coaches. They said, okay, make sure you know what precinct you're voting in. This is an election, it's going to take a long time. Be prepared to stay in line an hour or two, but don't give up. Whatever you do, don't give up. And this is Texas, so the booth stays up until 9 o'clock, just remember that. And how empowering that was. And my talk title today is, what is mine to do? And the direction I want to steer this conversation we're having is I want to steer this conversation into this is a spiritual community. So let's make our choice on what we choose to do based on our spiritual principles and spiritual practices and spiritual discussions. So those of you who know me know I love inspirational sayings. And when I have inspirational sayings, I keep focusing on them and let them be the intention of my life, so to speak. So the last time I shared with you on my way to my final panels for ministerial school in July, I told you about this Hindu mystic and scholar named Aurobindo that Ernest Holmes, and Ernest Holmes is the founder of our movement, became intently interested in and studied. And in fact, he was the last person that Ernest Holmes studied in his life. And what Aurobindo tells us this about our journey. He says, the ascent to the divine life is the human journey. That is the work of works. And he tells us that, just like Ernest Holmes tells us, just like when you go to classes that we tell you, is that divine life isn't something that's out there, right? It isn't something that we got to move our feet and go fight these battles to get. It's the gift that's always has been given and always will be there for us, whispering to us, I'm here when you're ready to come home. And Ernest Holmes tells us a similar thing. And so I'm teaching foundations now. And there's a great story in one of the first books that Ernest Holmes wrote called this thing called You. He says, imagine yourself, you're in a line of people. It's a long line. And the part of the line that you're in, you're focused on the physical world. You're focused on the trials and tribulations. There's good stuff in it, but there's also tough stuff in it. There's a lot of emotions in it, and you really don't know who you are. And imagine at the other end of the line, and I want to do this thought experiment with you today, but let's make the other end of the line outside, because this is great weather that we have here. And this weather that we have here isn't always weather that we have everywhere. See, Aurobindo tells us that the radiance and the joy of spirit is there for us, except we see it through veils. And to make it more practical, let me go to my Texas roots. So when we see things through veils, we talk about the weatherman. The weatherman will say, folks, today it's going to be clear to partly cloudy. Well, what he just told you, he didn't say that. He just told you that it's going to be mainly cloudy. And so you're experiencing the day. It's sort of overcast. Maybe there's a thunderstorm or two. I mean, in Texas, it can be pouring rain on one side of the street and sun shining on the other. That's the way Texas is. I remember having that conversation when I was about 8 years old with my brother in the back seat. We had that conversation. We were driving. It was like that. My parents were about ready to kill us because we did it for 30 minutes straight. But So anyway, and then all of a sudden you're in this cloudy day, and all of a sudden you feel some warm radiance on your skin. You look around, and the grass is greener, the plants are just shining a little brighter because the sun is showing its radiance on them. And so that's the veil that Aurobindo was talking about. And Ernest Holmes remember, we're in this long line, and our spiritual being that we've isolated ourselves from is outside. And he or she is outside in this perfect Southern California weather, as we always have here. And we're inside, and we think to come outside, nothing to do with reality. Well, actually, it's everything to do with reality, because we think to come outside, we've got to go fight these battles. We're in this middle of this forest, we keep running into trees we don't know about. There's plants that have thorns on them, they're bludgeoning our legs are bleeding. When we win that battle, then we got this huge stream that we need to cross. The stream is running fast, it's full of alligators. Then when we cross that, we have this huge desert that we need to cross. And remember, we just created all of this. And how did we create all of this? We created all of it because we're looking to the world of effects to cause our future instead of looking to our spiritual person, our spiritual being to create from on high. So Ernest Holmes is always a great wisdom teacher. So he tells us this. He says, if you knew as you know that you are alive, that this barrier truly is just a thing of belief, you would know that you have the tools to cut down the forest, to cross the streams, and even to cross the desert, until you find yourself. And Aurobindo tells us the same thing. And Ernest Holmes is very good about wisdom, and every bit of that is true. But we're in this forest. We're hurting. The emotions really hurt. These are real things that are happening into our lives. So maybe we need someone who can teach us compassion. And so to teach us compassion, I don't know anyone better than Dr. Martin Luther King. And my favorite sermon, I'd like to say it's his most famous one, but it's Michael's most famous one for me. It's the 3 dimensions of a complete person. And it's really interesting because Dr. King I could go down south and go in any church and say, there is not a better example of a great Southern Baptist minister than Dr. King. And I could win that argument all the time. And it's interesting when Dr. King sets this sermon up. He says, the first thing I want you to remember is don't get too involved in the factual meaning of Scripture here. Mm-hmm. So Dr. King, the good Baptist, just told us that. And he sets it up, he says, because it's all about revelations and it's all about symbolism, and he implies it's all about mysticism too. And the whole story is about this man named John who just got out of prison. And he sees the city of the New Jerusalem descending from heaven. And the point Dr. King makes is he goes on in Scripture, and this man John sees it as beautiful on all sides, equidistant on all sides. The height and the breadth and the width are the same. So he weaves that into a story that tells us what we can focus on our life on. And when we do these 3 aspects of our life, the bliss of life is ours. And the first thing that he talks about, we need to build ourselves up. So that's analogous to putting the oxygen mask on ourselves first. So if we're going to do good works, don't we have to be strong? Don't we have to do what we need to do? If we need to build ourselves up through prayer work, we do. If we need to build ourselves up for having enough food and sustenance, we go do what we need to do to take care of ourselves and our family. And there's different ways you can build yourself up. My personal journey, the best decisions I made to build myself up was education. Early on, I became a chemical engineer right out of high school, and I got that degree, and it's taken good care of me my entire life. An even more fulfilling decision was to go to ministerial school. And from the time I started thinking about it, it actually took me 25 years to actually find a way to make it happen. And I thought I'd go to ministerial school to get all the wisdom teaching and training. And it's strange because what's happened to me is that when I'm through with ministerial school, the absolutely most important thing to me is the connection we have with each other. And if you ask me what's going to be the most important of my ministry, it's going to be that connection that we have with each other. And so Dr. King warns us, though, you don't want to stay building yourself up your entire life. And some people are so focused on what they're doing, they're probably good providers for their family, but they're just looking at themselves, they've loaded themselves up in the mirror, and they never leave there. They never get past there. And he goes on to the second role model or way of being that we can be. And that way of being is to immensely care for other people. That is what you're about. The primary example I can think of is Mother Teresa. But we don't have to all be saints to do that. We don't. And the everyday example that I think of that's in every congregation in America is that of the Divine Mother and Divine Father, the child raising, the setting the example of who we are and who we are not, and trying to pass it on to our children. And the thing about that, I just had this conversation the other day, is you don't have to be a birth father or a birth mother to model the role of the Divine Father or the Divine Mother. Any one of us does it. And we can model it to youngsters, we can model it to our peers, we can model it to strangers, we can model it to our elders. Even if someone we really look up to, they're willing to listen to us, we can whisper in their ear, remember when you told me that? Yeah. And so the third way of being is the way of being very reverent to however you want to look at spirit, God, life, love. To being reverent to that which creates your experience, to that which sits in the silence and knows everything, knows all things for all people. And you see these people. You see these people in every congregation. Some of them are Buddhist monks with years of silent training. Some of us are our beloved practitioners. Some of us are congregants, and you see these in Catholic places, Baptist places, any religion that you have, you see these people who are reverent. One guy used to describe them as, they're the flame that never flickers, and they know the truth, and the truth is that they look to God for answers. And sometimes these people can do the healings that all of us that are so active in the world miss, because they're not involved in the drama of it. They just know the truth and are focused on the truth, and the more they know the truth, the more they're focused on it. They just know that it will unfold for them. So these three ways of beings, it's not like we do one and not the other. It's not like we choose our lot and that's what we have to do for the rest of our life, because quite frankly, we've all done all three at some level during this life experience. We'll continue to do all three. And Dr. King in his talk, he talks about when you get all three, he says when you get all these working together, then he says you find bliss. Then he goes on to say those wonderful inspirational things like you wake up in the morning and you see the stars dancing together and the sons and daughters of God are shouting for joy. Then that's your lot in life, he says, when you get all three of those working together. So my challenge to you today is just choose one of those ways of being and set your intention on it as you leave. And understand that we're all connected, and whatever you choose, take a walk and see your brothers and sisters. Take a walk and you may see someone that's really down on themselves. They're crying, but they're building themselves up. Take a walk and see someone that's stuck building themselves up. They've been doing it for 20 years and they're just bloated looking at themselves in the mirror. But don't be too judgmental about that, because all of us have at least been there in some sense in some part of our lives. And then continue your walk and see someone that's helping others. Maybe you choose to lend a hand. Maybe you choose to have some conversation with them saying, what is it that made you do this? And then you continue walking. And you see the reverent ones. You see the ones that nothing is bothering them. You see they're in their prayer. They're in their support. And whatever is going on in the physical world, they really don't care. Because they're going to tell you this. They're going to tell you, I know the truth, and the truth is going to set me free, and it's going to set you free. And so just enjoy your journey. Make one of those decisions. And look at others just like yourself going through this wonderful journey. So thank you for letting me share my story, and especially thank you for being such a loving and blessed spiritual community.